Have you ever wished that your designs in Sketch behaved in a more dynamic way? Something like Flexbox with CSS? Well, with the new feature called Stacks from the Auto Layout Sketch plugin, that's exactly what you can do. On this session, we're going to talk about Stacks from the Auto Layout Sketch plugin. And if you haven't seen my first video about that plugin, please click the link. I don't know where it is, but just click the link and watch that video first. Stacks allows you to work in something very similar to Flexbox, which allows you to rearrange the elements, resize them, and everything working in a dynamic way. For example, you can resize one element inside a grid, and then all the rest of the elements will resize and fall into place. Or you can rearrange one element inside a row of elements. You just move it to one place, and then the rest of the elements just rearrange, accommodating themselves to the layout. It works very similarly to Flexbox on CSS, UI Stock View on iOS, and Flexbox Layout on Android. So enough talk, let's get to it. Okay, so today's menu is we're going to learn the basics first, then we're going to play with some examples, and then do some advanced stuff. So you can download the file that I'm using. Just find the link on the description, and you will be able to follow along on the video, or just download the file and figure out by yourself. If you want to, just close the video and just download the file. Okay, so before we begin with the basics, I just want to give you a demo of what this plugin does. So for example, I have this layout where I have different rows and different elements inside the rows. So for example, I have, this is one row, this is another row, this is another row. If I were to and this are nested stacks. And if I wanted to rearrange some of the elements, I could just, like, for example, move this element over here, and then automatically it just it rearranges the elements for me. I didn't have to rearrange or anything. Let me Command Z that. If I wanted to, even this row to, you know what, I want to make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, and then all the other elements that are inside this stack will just adjust the spacing between the stacks. So, and what if I wanted to add another element inside this row? So I'm going to duplicate this guy. I just duplicate it, and then automatically it adds one more element, and then the rest of the stacks below automatically also resized to that size of the whole element. For example, if I were to resize this, make it a little bit smaller, then the other ones resize to fill the layout. But for example, if I want to move this guy over here, I can just move this guy. Or if I want to move this guy over here, it just moves there, and I just moved it. That's all I did, and it just works just as I would expect it to work. Okay, cool. So those were some examples. Let's actually learn how to do these things. So let's go with the basics. So the basic things is, once you have this plugin installed, again, if you haven't seen the first video that I made about this plugin, please just find it on the description, because this plugin is a very big plugin. We're just going to be talking about one special feature called Stacks inside the Auto Layout plugin. So if you want to learn the other things that this plugin does, just go to that video. Once you have the plugin installed, you're going to see it here on the bottom corner, and it's called Auto Layout. And then there's a new icon that looks like a folder with 3 dots. That's the new feature. It's called Stacks. And once I can create a group of elements and I create a stack with them, then I have these options here. I can create a stack that is vertical or horizontal. So for example, on this stack that I created here, it's horizontal, and they're aligned vertically like this, horizontally to the center, to the middle, but I can align them also to the top or to the bottom. Right now, you cannot see the difference because they're all the same size, but let me change the size of one of the elements. Let me change it to bottom so you can see what actually happens. So I'm going to change it to the bottom. I'm going to resize this guy, and then see how the other elements just align to the bottom, just as if you had done that on Flexbox too. Okay, now there's another type of alignment. So one is to the bottom, to the top, and there's also to fill. Like this one, it just fill the size of all the elements. So I just press that one and see how the rest of the elements inside that stack just resized to the size that was the bigger one. If I were to make this one a little bit bigger, then the other ones will follow. I don't think it shrinks. No, you have to shrink the whole element, not just one element. So, but if I were to shrink all the elements, they would just shrink it, and that's okay. But then if I were to resize one of these, they will all resize. The cool thing is that I can also rearrange the elements. So for example, if I want to move this panda all the way to the left, I just move it over here and then rearranges. This guy, the little happy face, move to the middle because that's the order between them. Another thing that you can configure when you create a stack is the spacing between the elements, between the components. So for example, here on this stack, I actually put the spacing of 32 pixels. If I were to put it at 0 pixels, then it would just like get together. So let's say that I put at 16 pixels, and there you go. You see the spacing. And if I were to resize this, that wouldn't matter. The spacing between the elements would always be 16 pixels. So let me just check that. See, it's still 16 pixels. That's the cool thing about this. And also something that you can change here is the direction. Right now the direction is horizontal. Let's change it to vertical to see how it looks. So here is horizontal, change it to vertical and see how it changed vertical here. And since I'm keeping the size of them, it did that, but let me just make them smaller so we can see the difference. And let me just make them like that. There you go. So like that, or horizontal, there you go. Again, the thing is that right now they're really big, so they just like realign and they're super big. But if I were to do something else with the plugin that says, hey, I actually want it to be fixed to the left and fixed to the right, you can do it right here. Then once you realign, it should fix that. See how it just fixes the width of it? Vertical and horizontal. It doesn't make them any bigger. Okay, cool. So we learned how to change the direction, the alignment, and the spacing between stacks. So let's learn how to create an actual stack. So I'm going to go here outside and I'm going to just create a simple stack. I'm just going to create one element. I'm going to put another element. I'm going to change the color of this element so we can see the difference when it changes. And I'm going to change the spacing of the color of this one to blue. Okay, so now I have 3 elements and I want to create a stack with these 3 elements. Once I have them selected, I go to this here on the auto layout, says create a stack group. I create the stack group, and now automatically it looks like nothing happened. The thing is that I already had a spacing, a very consistent spacing between the elements, so it doesn't look like a lot happened. But let me show you what actually happened. Ooh, see, there I changed it to 0, so it got together. So the first thing you will notice is that it creates a group with this icon, the blue icon. It says stack group, and then it puts your elements inside that group. And then you can select that stack group, and here you can change your settings of it. So you know what? You can change the alignment of it. You can change the direction and you can change the spacing. You know, instead of 0, I want to change it to 32 pixels of spacing between the elements and see how it changes. Now, if I want to rearrange the elements, I can just move one of these elements. I'm going to put it over here and see how the other elements align. And the red, now it's the one on the left. And if I were to resize one of them, nothing happens. What happened here is actually that it aligned to the center, because right now my alignment is not to the top, to the bottom, it's actually to the center. So if I were to resize this a little bit smaller too, see how it aligns to the center and then brings them together so the spacing is the same. It's pretty cool. I just like, I'm falling in love with this plugin. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to resize, for example, this one and see how it pushes the other element to the other side. If I were to resize it this size, then it will get back to the left. You can also change the direction of it. Something that I didn't tell you. Here in vertical, you change it like that, or horizontal, back to horizontal. And here in vertical, you can say, hey, align to hold on, you can align it to the center, you can align it to the left, you can align it to the right, or you can say that resize so it fills the width. And there you go, now it fills the width. Pretty cool stuff, right? Let me show you an example here on a masonry example. So for example, here I have different columns with different elements inside. And not just only that, the columns are stacks that are nested inside a stack. I'm going to show you more about that right in a moment, but let me just show you what is happening right now. I have this group, and this group is pinned to the left and pinned to the right. So if I were to move one of these elements over here, see how the other column moves to the right. It's so cool, right? And if I were to move this element, I want it to be over here, see how it moves there, and then it pushes the other one above it. So you can just play around with it. For example, I want to duplicate this guy. I just duplicate it, and then it resizes everything, because right now I have it all, so it resizes the size of it. But if I wanted to resize the whole thing, I can just like resize it like this. And I want to rearrange this over here. Look at that. It's so cool, right? It works like magic. If you want to limit the size of it, you can also, for example, I could limit the size of it here on the point on the pin. Let me just make this bigger so you can see what's going on here. I'm pinning everything, so now if I resize or anything, it's always going to be the same size. That's not always what you want, but that's one option that you have. So I can move this guy over here. Let's put it all the way to the top. See how it moves to the top. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So now if I were to make this column a little bit bigger, it makes the other ones a little bit smaller. If I were to make this column a little bit bigger, then it's going to make the other ones a little bit smaller. Super cool. Try it out. Download the file so you can play around with this. Okay, that was one example. And I was telling you about nesting stacks. That's something else that you can do. And it's pretty cool, because once you start combining nested stacks with other stacks, then you can create more complex elements. So for example here, this is an example that we saw before, we can see that we have one stack here on the top, which is just one row, and then we have another stack here on the bottom. So, and those stacks are inside their own stack. So for example, this whole thing, I move it over here, and then it pushes the other one below. And if I were to, since these are inside their own stack, you can see it here, this is a row, and then also it has another stack. The stack rows, and then inside the row, and then over here there's even another stack that I put here. So this one is another stack. You can move them around, or I can resize one of them. For example, I want to resize this guy a little bit bigger, and then it resizes, and then since the other ones are following this stack, then the other ones on the left resize too. So all I did is just putting a stack inside a stack. Let me show you a more complex example, a more real example, so you can see what's happening here. So for example, here I have different stacks. I have one stack where the product, this is one, there are multiple products, and then all these products are inside their own stack, just one column of products. But inside each product card, each product element, there are also other stacks. So for example, here I have the info, and the photo as their own stack. The product has a horizontal stack that you can see it here, and then inside the info also has a stack. All these elements are also their own stack. That way, if I were to change this, the name of this, it will push the whole the rest of the text below. So for example, if I were to go pretty much, let me change it to pretty much everything, and boom, see how it pushed the element below, and it made the whole thing, I didn't have to realign all the layers and keep the same spacing. It just did it for me. If I were to, you know what, actually, let's remove one of these characteristics. I can remove that, and then the resizing of everything, readjust this, the button gets back there, so it has the same spacing. If I were to, you know what, actually I want the price to be closer to the price, I can just move the price a little bit here, and then see how the other element let me just move it here. You can see, oh, this is so cool. If I were to, I don't know why I would do this, but you can do this. Let's say that you want your button over here, and then it pushes the other elements below. Also, since these are two elements inside their own stack, I can also rearrange this. I want to move it over here. Oops, sorry. Let me move it over here. And then the image moved to the right. If also I wanted to rearrange these elements, and I wanted to, you know what, this product, I want it to be the second product, I can just move it. Since this is now the top top one, then it pushes the rest of the contents below. But you can realign them again like that and see how everything just keeps the same spacing here. Since 24 and 24, it keeps it all always the same. And over here, my photo, the spacing between the photo and the info is 32. And if I were to change the info over here to the left, it's also still going to be 32 pixels. And over here on this inside the info is 16 pixels between each portion of information. So if I were to change this guy over here, it's still going to be 16 pixels between them. Let's say that you also want to, for example, this product is outside the stack of products, and I want to include it inside the other stack. I can just cut it, and then inside this stack, I'm going to have all my products here, and I'm just going to paste that other product and see how rearranges automatically. So let me do that again so you can see what happened there. I'm just inside this stack group. Inside the stack group, I'm just going to paste that other product and see how it automatically adjusts the spacing between them. If I were to just move it around, it will be very smart and dynamically change the content depending on where I put it. Now I want to tell you about a hack that I found. I don't think it was intended to be used this way, but I was wondering if you could create dynamic buttons with this plugin. That way, if you change the input of one button, you want the size of the background of the whole button to also adjust depending on the size of the input that you put, of the text, of the copy. So here I have multiple examples. The hack that I did is actually, I'm using different elements. So it's not a perfect hack. If you want to use this, I recommend it. It might save you some time. Let me show you real quick what I'm actually doing. I'm separating all the elements on the left, center, and right. That way, they're all in one stack, and one and another are pushing each other. So when I change the text inside in the middle, it will push the left and the right sides outside. So let me show you real quick how this works. So for example, I have a text input here. I want to change it to something else. Let me change it to hello, and then smiley face, and see how the content is being pushed to the right. What about if you have an icon? Sometimes you have a text input and then you have an arrow, or you have a price thing or a tag, something, an icon. So for example here, this is a stack inside the stack. So I have my stack here in the middle with all my elements, which is, let me show you here on the text, I have the middle and the right and the left. But inside the middle, I also have another stack, which is the text and an icon. So you can see here inside the stack, I have an arrow and the copy. So if I change the copy to, let's do it, it would change like that. It would just push the arrow and the background too. Pretty cool stuff. I invite you to play around with this file, and you're gonna find everything there. Another hack that I found with this is to create tags or little buttons that are next to each other, like when you're adding emails to an email list, or when you're adding tags, for example, in Tumblr, when you're adding multiple tags. And these are little buttons that are just next to each other. So one big button will push the other ones, and then one small one will just shrink the whole thing. And then when you delete one, then the whole elements should move. And it's a nightmare to do this on your design. So using stack groups will be pretty easy. So let me just put this, for example, here I have a group of tags inside a tag. So right now it's only one tag, but let me duplicate this. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to actually center this, and I'm going to put it so it's always aligned to the center. And I'm going to just change the different text of this and see how it pushes the rest of the elements. So I'm going to change from hello to technology, and I click outside it. Look at that. It's like magic. It just pushes the whole content. It pushes the stacks, and I can add as many as I want. So I'm going to add another one. Hold on. I'm going to actually start from hello over here and see how it pushes all. It puts it on the right of that. So I'm going to change. I'm going to put multiple ones. I'm going to change this to design, and I'm going to change this to fashion. Oops. And I'm going to change this to rocket science. Rocket science, because sometimes it feels like rocket science what we're doing right here, right? Look at that. That's awesome, right? It's just like I just changed the input, and all the spacing, all the elements are just like fall into place, and it's amazing. Okay. So now with that, almost that same hack, I also wanted to see if you could use it for dynamic text on big text layers. So for example, I created this one, and this one is another stack of stacks. So I have different cards that are stacked together, and inside the cards, there are elements that are stacked. So all of this information is stacked too. I have also one layer that is padding, that is all, the opacity of it is 0%. That way, my padding is always there, it's always present, and it's one of the stacks. So I'm going to change the title of this. I'm going to go over here. Oops, I have designer news here. I'm going to change from use the news of the new 7 planets that we just found, and it's awesome. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put it over here, change it. Look at that. It just pushes the content down. I'm going to copy a little bit of the actual article. I'm going to copy this whole thing. Copy. I'm going to make the artboard a little bit bigger so we can actually see what happens here. And I'm going to change this, paste it, and boom, look at that. Oh, it actually, I need to make this smaller because it also copied spacing. So see how the read more readjusted so it's closer to the text? That's something that, since they're all in a stack, they just get closer, so the spacing between the elements is always the same. Something that happened here is that the size of it stayed on the big side. It didn't shrink down. So that's something that they need to fix, or probably they want to keep it that way. But once I resize it, see how the rest of the elements just rearrange there, because they want to keep that spacing consistent. So I'm going to do the same over here. I'm going to just copy another paragraph over here just so we can see it here. And I'm going to change this to, this is so freaking, okay, freaking awesome. Look at that. It just pushes the content. Awesome, right? So again, I have all these examples in the file. You can play around with them and probably learn and apply it on your own designs. So now let's get to something a little bit more complex that you can create with this. And this is when you have a grid and you have multiple elements with multiple metadata, and you're creating, for example, a shopping cart, or sorry, a shopping list, a discovery list of different products. So for example, here I have different rows, and these rows, they're all aligned to the center, and they also stacks with stacks. So for example, this is one stack that also lives in one stack of the whole elements. If I were to duplicate, let me just make this artbar a little bit bigger so you can see what happens. If I were to duplicate this guy, for example, this stack, I duplicate it, and see how it pushes the rest of the elements below. If I were to make one of these a little bit smaller, I want to make it a little bit smaller, see how the rest of the elements just rearrange. It's so cool, right? This one is not, the width of it is dynamic. So if I were to add another element, for example, here, I want to add one of these, I duplicate just this card, I duplicate it, and see how the rest of the elements rearrange and resize according to the size of that big row that just like resized a lot, right? So, and that's because I have it in resize, but I can also do it centered, and that way, if one of these just, I make it smaller, it would just center itself. It won't resize the rest of the stacks. If I were to resize this one also a little bit smaller, let's say around there, see how the elements centered and also these elements resize too. It's just, oh man, I'm so excited about this stuff, right? Let me resize this a little bit bigger. But you know what? I actually do want them to be all the same width, all the different rows to be the same width. So I'm going to go over here, back here, and actually going to change it so they're all the same width. And that, just like magic. Pretty cool, right? Let me show you another one where the width of the rows is fixed. So when the rows are fixed, I just put the pins here on the left, on the right. So it's always going to be the same percentage, the size according to the artboard. So that way, if I were to duplicate one of these cards, duplicate it, and it only affects that row. The rest of the rows remain the same size because they're fixed according to the artboard. If I were to delete one of these, then the other elements just resize and make themselves a little bit bigger. So let me actually make this whole row, because let's say that it's a feature row, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger and see how it pushes the rest of the elements below. And you know what? Actually, I want to put this one on top, and I just put it on top. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And there you go. And you know what? I'm going to delete this one. We don't need that one. Let's keep it at 3. How cool is that, right? Okay, again, I'm putting all these elements on the file so you can play around with them. I have another example just similar to that, but here also the stacks is on the text. Sometimes your text layers are your titles. Sometimes there are only one row and sometimes there are multiple rows. So for example, let's say that this guy is chips with some awesome stacking going on. Imagine there, and you're going to realign everything, not with stacks. Just click outside and then see how the stack, the cart over here, it made itself a little bit bigger, and then this element just kept the same spacing, and pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff. Let me say that I want to rearrange and I want to put the title on the top. I don't know why, but I want to put the title on the top. I just move it, and then the photo automatically moves below. Cool. Okay, so there are some times, for example, that you want to be able to have your elements that fill the whole page. So you can totally do that here. For example, I have this element, which is a news card, and then inside the news card, I have all these elements which also have stacks with stacks, and then this news card is also inside a stack, which is going to be a horizontal row. So I'm going to just duplicate this guy. I just duplicate the news card, I duplicate it, and see how it already pushes itself to the right. I'm going to move it, duplicate it again, and it also duplicates to the right. Pretty cool stuff, right? I'm going to just change the photo of it just so we can, I'm using a craft plugin, the data craft plugin, and I'm going to change it to city. This is actually from Unsplash, actually. Okay, so I have that, and I want to duplicate this whole row too. So I have the bottom row, and I'm going to duplicate it. Bottom row, duplicate. I'm going to put it all the way to the top. And now I have the whole grid, and this one is going to actually be linked to the top, to the left, and to the right. That way it will always grow. And actually this one, I only want it to be 2 columns. So I delete one of them and then see how everything else resizes. Awesome, so awesome, right? If I wanted to actually make it a little bit bigger, I can make it a little bit bigger, and then the other column gets a little bit smaller. Just if I want it to be a little bit bigger. There you go. And let's say that this one, I want to make it a little bit smaller. See how it gets smaller. But since this one is not attached to the left and to the right, I have to do that, and then I just resize it. See, I want to do this whole thing attached to the left and to the right, and that way, if I resize this guy, then the other guys will resize too, and keep the same padding, which is 0, and also resize to the size of the artboard. Pretty awesome stuff. Now, something else that you are allowed to do with Auto Layout, I'm going to duplicate this guy, and I want to see how it will look with an iPad Pro. Right now, it's just an iPad Air, so I'm going to go over here, iPad, and I'm going to change it to iPad Pro. I change it, and then automatically everything just rearranges. It's just there. If I were to just change the whole size of the whole artboard, see how everything just falls in place. Awesome stuff. That's pretty much it. I have some exercises in the file. You can practice and you can do your own. I invite you to do your own and play around with all the examples that I made. Leave in the comments if you find this plugin useful, any other ways that you find this plugin that you think you would use it. It will be awesome to share with other people. And as always, thank you so much for joining me. We just hit 10,000 subscribers, and I'm really happy about that. I want to say thank you so much, and see you on the next one. Okay, bye bye.